Logan, you hit the button. Sup, freaks? It's your boy Marty here to introduce this rip of TFTC. I should also check out Unchained Capital. Right down the hall from us here at the Bitcoin Commons. They're draining the exchanges until September 8th. It's running a special promo. If you set up a vault, they're waiving the $1,000 automatic buy of the Bitcoin to set up a vault. They're offering it for $250 now. This white glove concierge service is going to take you from zero to having a 2 or 3 multi-sig setup of which you hold 2 keys. If you use the code TFTC, you're going to get $50 off that $250 concierge service. They're also offering a lower onboarding fee for their IRA product as well, $250 as well. If you use the code TFTC, you're going to get $50 off that. I don't want to say as well too many times in a row. Go to unchained.com/concierge to check this all out. And if you have a single point of failure in your custody model, you're holding on your Bitcoin on an exchange or in a single sig wallet, Unchained is here to help you eliminate those single points of failure. Unchained.com/concierge. Use the code TFTC. This rip is also brought to you by our good friends at Braiins. We're a few days away from Slush Pool transitioning to Braiins Pool. And I actually wrote the foreword to a Bitcoin mining handbook that the Braiins team wrote. Very honored to have done this. Go to Braiins.com. Check out everything they have going on. They help you idiot-proof your mining operation. If you have an ASIC that is compatible with their Braiins OS Plus firmware, which allows you to download a new firmware on your ASIC and make it more efficient and allow you to produce more hashes, which then allows you to produce more sats. Again, it idiot-proofs your mining operation. If you have an ASIC that's compatible with Braiins OS Plus and you're not using it, you're an idiot because you're leaving sats on the table. Only idiots do that. Don't do that. Go to Braiins.com, Braiins.com. Check out the firmware. If it's compatible with your ASIC, download it. Check out Braiins Pool. Check out Braiins Insights. Check out the books that they're producing, the content they're producing. Incredible team. This was also brought to you by our good friends at HodlHodl. HodlHodl is here to bring you a lending platform with no KYC, no AML. It's peer-to-peer. What you do is you put your Bitcoin up as collateral in a 2 or 3 multi-sig escrow. You hold 1 key, your counterparty in the loan holds 1 key, and HodlHodl holds the 3rd key. You don't have control over the Bitcoin, obviously, since you only have 1 key in that 2 or 3 quorum. However, you have visibility into the loan, so you know your sats aren't being rehypothecated. As long as you're paying back your loan plus the interest associated with it, you're going to get your sats back at the end of the day. Bitcoin is collateral. You get stable coins in return. Peer-to-peer, no KYC, no AML. Go to lend.hodlhodl.com. This rip was also brought to you by our good friends at Upstream Data. Upstream Data is here to take care of all your mining needs. If you're an at-home miner, they have their black boxes. You put a couple miners in, and it takes the noise from woo to great for the sound. Your wife doesn't like the sound. Your HOA doesn't like the sound. You buy a black box. You put your ASICs in the black box, and it takes care of the sound. Also takes care of the heat. It's going to make sure that your miners don't crap out from being too hot. They've got good airflow. Go to shop.upstreamdata.ca to check out the black box. If you use the code FREAKS, FREAKS, you're going to get 5% off the black box. They're also selling bigger, more industrial size mining containers. If you're in the oil field, you're sitting on some pretty profits, you're looking to diversify into Bitcoin mining, ASICs are pretty cheap, and then Upstream Data is there for all your needs. They build the data centers, they build the generators, and they can acquire the miners for you. So go to upstreamdata.ca to check that out. Tell them that TFTC sent you. If you do some inquiry into their hash huts, I'm a hash hut customer. I have a 50 kilowatt hash hut that has been running flawlessly since I plugged it in the beginning of this year. Incredible product, incredible team, really helping to distribute hash rate and empower power producers, whether you're a utility company or an upstream oil and gas company, to turn your wasted assets, whether it be excess electricity or stranded natural gas, into Bitcoin. Upstreamdata.ca. Enjoy this, Riff Freaks.
You've had a dynamic where money's become freer than free.
If you talk about a Fed just gone nuts, all the central banks going nuts.
So it's all acting like safe haven.
I believe that in a world where central bankers are tripping over themselves to devalue their currency, Bitcoin wins. In the world of fiat currencies, Bitcoin is the victor.
I mean, that's part of the bull case for Bitcoin.
If you're not paying attention, you probably should be.
All right, we're recording. Tracy, What the hell is going on in the world? Are we
Hey, how you doing?
doing well? I'm on a back deck with a bit of wind behind me, so please excuse the wind, sound freaks. And Tracy just moved in to a new house and is waiting for the furniture to arrive.
So I'm in my kitchen. So.
I was saying, beautiful kitchen. I love the blue cabinets. They accent the room well. But I'm very excited to have you on the show right now. And I'm happy actually we had to delay it a week because a lot has happened since last Wednesday when we were originally slated to record.
Oh my God, it's gone off the rails, especially in Europe, especially this morning.
Yeah. Well, I haven't been paying attention this morning. I've been in calls all morning. Yesterday was pretty crazy. You had Ecuador come out and basically warn the European Union that there was $1.5 trillion worth of a liquidity crunch that was going to force energy traders to get margin called. And they were essentially saying that the energy traders need to bail out right now. We had the UK with Prime Minister Truss taking the helm and immediately trying to enact price controls on electricity within the United Kingdom. And obviously we have the war waging on between Russia and Ukraine, and Russia essentially weaponizing their gas in reaction to the West weaponizing our monetary and payment systems. What are you saying? You haven't been on the show.
What you missed today is Russia came out and reiterated the fact that they will cut off anybody that enacted price caps on oil, gas, coal, you name it, any kind of energy form. And then hours later, the EU came out and said, we're going to enact price caps on gas.
Yeah. And
then also use the term that they're going to have to, you're going to have to curb energy usage to flatten the curve, quote unquote. Started getting PTSD.
Yeah, I saw that. I did catch that. Von der Leyen coming out and saying they need to flatten the demand curve for energy at particular points of the day. We're seeing that here in the United States too, in California right now. But let's focus in on price controls. I mean, if you have any sense of history or any understanding of basic economics, price controls never work. So how are the United Kingdom and the European Union planning on actually enacting these controls? And will they or will they not work?
They will not work. The EU right now is, their price cap is at 200 euros per megawatt instead of, I think it's trading at like 450 right now. The problem, and that's for non-gas electricity. The problem is that once you enact those price controls, you're taking away profits from a company, first of all, and it completely disincentivizes them to produce more or seek out other alternative forms of energy because you're capping them off at the knees, basically. So, that never works. It's a horrible long-term strategy. As far as the UK is concerned, they're talking about more of a stimulus plan where it's like $130 billion worth of stimulus to companies and to the public. So that's not as bad, but it doesn't curb demand. That said, Truss did come out today and say she wanted to expand drilling in the North Sea and to pursue nuclear power. So that was I was kind of very shocked because that actually does make sense. So let's hope that they can pursue that path, and things should ease up for the UK if they can actually enact that. And, they get every member of parliament to back them up on that. So that looks a little bit brighter than what the EU is currently doing.
Yeah, I mean, that is encouraging to see, but is it too little too late to begin drilling in the North Sea and spinning up nuclear power plants? I think this is the problem that a lot of these politicians are going to run into in the coming months is when push comes to shove and it's blatantly obvious that they're very short energy assets, they're going to try and throw money at the problem, but you can't print dollars and produce gas in a very short amount of time.
Well, exactly. I mean, there's always that lag between, we're going to enact this plan and then to when it comes to fruition and you can actually get wells to start producing. So, or build nuclear plants, et cetera. So, of course, it's too little too late, but at least perhaps it saves them in the long run.
Yeah, we'll see. That's do you think this whole scenario that's playing out where it seems like much of Europe is going to have a very rough winter because they're going to have an inability to get natural gas to fuel their economy? Do you think the politicians learn their lesson, or do you think this is just a temporary blip where they see it as a road bump on the way to this green transition?
Oh, I think they think it's a road bump on the way to this green transition. I mean, the EU in particular has definitely not given up this idea of green transition. I mean, they've, come out and said, this is the reason, what is happening right now is the reason we need to push harder into this. So they're definitely not giving up that sort of path. They're doubling down on it, right? When you're wrong, do more of it. It's kind of their theory. So, I definitely think they're in for, a long haul and a lot of trouble. And it's almost difficult to think that this is completely due to ineptitude, right? I mean, everything seems a little too. You can't be making this many mistakes and have something not be on purpose somewhere.
Yeah. The whole ESG narrative and the narratives coming out of the World Economic Forum by the end of the decade, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. And there's
right.
Nothing.
And they seem hell bent on making that happen right now with these policies. Right? Going to make is making it better. Right? And, it's just poor choice after poor choice.
Yeah. I mean, there's no better way to get a populace desperate and have their hands out to the government than inciting an energy crisis that cascades into a food crisis, that cascades into a currency crisis. I mean, there's
and we're already kind of starting to see that civil unrest, right? We're already kind of seeing protests in Italy, the Czech Republic, especially. They had a huge protest, like 70,000 people, and now they're starting to backtrack, kind of on that whole sanctions on Russia. Right, we're kind of seeing them kind of pull back on that a little bit. So, we're kind of seeing a fracturing somewhat with Europe right now, where, France is, starting to get wary of the whole sanction thing. You got the Czech Republic, you've got, Italy's kind of got their thing going on. So, it's obviously Germany and Brussels, Belgium, EU Commission is really driving this, but I think that starving, hungry, cold people tend to revolt. So you have to think if things get bad enough, they're gonna have a problem on their hands.
Yeah, no, and that's what will be very interesting to see as the years pass, as we head toward 2025, is what does this restructuring global energy markets, the geopolitical landscape look like? So we have one half of the equation, the Western world, like you mentioned, Italy and others are beginning to say, hey, we don't want to go down this path. And you're starting to see signs that they may reach out to Russia and say, hey, we're fine taking your gas. And then the other half of the equation, you have Russia, China, India, Iran, other players who are saying, hey, let's just completely leave these guys behind and create our own market over here. What are you seeing in terms of the chess pieces that are being moved in that regard?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the BRICS nations, right? I mean, they're looking to expand. Even Saudi Arabia is talking about joining BRICS. And so, there is a fracturing going on because, that sort of the Asia, Middle East, Asia sections are kind of like, but you have to realize they have very different economies than we do as well. You're talking about more of those are emerging markets. I mean, Russia, obviously not so much, but, they're not they still need to move forward, right? So they're still looking for cheap energy. And that's still, coal and natural gas and oil. Even though prices are high right now, generally speaking, they are, less than, building out solar farms and wind farms. And besides that, you can't have intermittent power sources as your base load. So if you want to bring your economy from an emerging market to DM market, then, you're going to have to use those kind of resources, because you got to get electricity to everybody. You got to get food to everybody. You got to get, right? To kind of raise them out of poverty and into a DM nation. Where we're like the aging economies in the West, right? And so there's definitely a dichotomy between the two.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating being an American citizen and watching the current administration just shoot our future selves in the foot. I mean, we're relatively inoculated from everything going on in Europe right now, but that's one thing I don't think many people here in the States realize, is that what's going on over there will affect us in the form of a credit crisis and broken down supply chains.
Oh, absolutely. We'll have some sort of contagion problem. Plus the policies here where, oil and gas companies are being persecuted by this industry. I mean, this administration's given out just over 127,000 permits so far within the first 2 years. No administration has given out less than 4 million. So they're just not, on one hand, they want you to produce more, but they're not giving you access to permits and land to do so.
Yeah, but hey, there's already permits out there. There's already people that are sitting on unused permits, so we don't need to issue anymore.
That's not how it works.
No.
You need to have that backlog, right? I've complained about, as much as I think Europe is nuts. This administration is nuts as well, and it's really doing nothing to really help us move forward either. I mean, the new inflation reduction, just call it the inflation plan. I mean, there's really nothing in there that's that's going to do much. Most of those things are for instance, if you look at their policies towards renewables, where you can get tax credits and things like that for your EV, but you can only get credit if those things are made in America, right? So you can get a tax credit on batteries, but it has to be made in America. Well, we don't make a lot of batteries here. We don't have a lot of lithium mines here, right? So a lot of it is kind of like filler words, unless we can actually bring that manufacturing here, which would be fantastic. The problem is that nobody wants it in their backyard, right? We've been trying to Nevada's been trying to get a lithium mine open forever. Arizona, copper, and they're running up against the environmentalists and been in court for the last years. So,
are these people actually environmentalists though, or are they simply Malthusian people who want to see the rest of us suffer?
Perhaps. Perhaps.
So, again, going back to this global restructuring of international energy markets, let's dig into the relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, because it seems like that's souring a bit. You mentioned that they're thinking about joining the BRICS countries. How big of a pivot would this be, not only for the U.S., but for the landscape of geopolitics and energy trade moving forward?
Well, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia have had a very, very long relationship, and I don't think that relationship is going away anytime soon. That said, obviously, the relationship during this particular administration is very poor, comparatively speaking. And so, Saudi Arabia, still, you have to understand that, Iran is, still an OPEC nation. You've got Russia, who is an OPEC plus. So they have a lot of ties to the BRIC nations. Plus, they're in their backyard, right? I mean, those are the people that are in their backyard. So it just makes sense for them to form alliances. Saudi Arabia still has the biggest refinery here, Motiva, in the U.S. So, it's not like, they'll always have that relationship, and they still buy, weapons from us. We still buy oil from them. So, again, I don't think that relationship's going away anytime soon, but, when you see the destructive path the West is on, kind of energy-wise, who are you going to align yourself with, especially when your economy is built on oil and gas?
Yeah. I tweeted it out earlier today. I think the time is nigh for people to overthrow the politicians and the unproductive class running all this policy in the West, because again, I've got 2 children sitting here thinking about, they're young, they're 2 and 3 months old, how they're going to grow into this world and what the world's going to look like when they're 10, 15, 20. I think it feels like, there's this, you can, maybe we live in a bubble, and just because we cross paths on FinTwit and Bitcoin Twitter, and people within those circles tend to understand the world more granularly than your average Joe. But I do think even the average Joe is beginning, especially in Europe, to have these pangs, like something is terribly wrong here. We need to drastically fix something. Like, I think we need to find a way to get these unproductive politicians out of our way, and to let us just do what we need to do to make sure that we're energy secure and have an abundant future moving forward, which is, again, focusing here on North America, between Canada, the US, and Mexico. If we wanted to, we could have a very vibrant, independent energy sector. But there's just this inability when you consider all the regulations that exist in Canada and that are coming here to the United States. It's completely baffling that we're sitting here and watching these people wreck not only our economy today, but future generations as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very frustrating. The hope that I have is that, the pendulum's been swinging this way so hard, right, that they always swing back. So, I'm hoping that that's kind of sooner than later, because I think, again, when you start starving people out, freezing people out, they start to get mad, hard times.
Hard times create strong men, apparently.
Yeah,
it seems like.
Right? We've had it easy, so people don't understand. So, I do have hope that this will swing back the other way, because I don't even know how these people make it to office. How these people keep getting elected, and why we just watch them make mistake after mistake, to be honest.
Yeah, it's complacency. And people have been lulled into this false sense of reality where they believe, like, to do anything on a grand scale, we need the government, we need the states to come in and do this, where you really don't. And again, the first time you were on, we talked about the intersection of Bitcoin mining and energy in the energy sectors. And I think it's a perfect example of the mining industry beginning to really stick its roots into the energy sector. Like, nobody is really asking permission. We're just going, scooping up abandoned wells, plugging in generators, mining Bitcoin. A positive externality of that is you have less methane leak, but that's not really the reason people are doing it. They're doing it for cheap incentives. And that's what, again, it's just, how do we get people to wake up and say, hey, we don't need these people to actually do what we need to do to create abundance. In fact, they're probably significantly prohibiting us from reaching that abundance. And I'm curious to know, if you had a magic wand for here in North America, what would you do to change energy policy in short order in Canada, the US, and Mexico?
I'd fire every politician, first of all. You need less regulation. People are smart enough. Nobody wants to, go out there and pollute the hell out of everything, right? I mean, everybody, I think people are generally conscious about that, don't want to dump sewage in rivers and, leave oil spills and wells uncapped, or, be completely irresponsible about that. So, I definitely think that, you need less regulation and less people governing it. Put that back to the states. Give that back to the states. Let each state kind of govern themselves. Because really, that's how it was initially supposed to happen, right? I mean, it was supposed to be each state, and was above state laws were above federal law. The federal government just kind of watch over everything, not to get its hands in the state's business. So I kind of think we need to go back to that, right? And kind of look inward to, our own communities and how we can help our own communities, right?
Completely agree. And that, I mean, there are some promising trends in that direction. The Supreme Court, with their EPA versus West Virginia ruling, really gives power back to the states to tell the EPA to screw off. We're seeing states like Florida and Texas and Missouri begin to actively tell the federal government to stay out of their business. And I think that's a trend that will only continue. And I've tweeted recently, I think when it comes to oil and gas extraction specifically, a lot of these states just need to say, no, we're going to drill. We're not listening to you. We desperately need these resources in the economy, and your policies don't make any sense. They're actually not going to lower prices. They're not going to make anybody more secure. And you can make a strong argument that there is no climate emergency. In fact, I think it's almost certain that we don't live in a world in which there's a climate emergency. Humans are thriving. The environment is fine, and the world getting a little bit warmer. Climate is changing. Climate changes every day, every month, every week, decades, centuries. And to think that we're going to just shoot ourselves in the foot as a society globally because of this Greta Thunberg-driven meme that the world is gonna boil if we don't stop using hydrocarbons.
It is always, it keeps changing. In the 70s, it was the coming ice age. Right? And so we were all going to die. It was going to be an ice age. We were all going to freeze to death. That didn't happen. Right now, it's all we're going to, all burst into fiery hell, which is not going to happen either. Right? I think it's too much. Everybody's too doom and gloom. The world's going to end tomorrow. What a disaster. I'm like, let's make tomorrow better instead of, running around telling everybody it.
Well, this is where I think the pendulum swings back rather aggressively, is when people begin to realize that the policies enacted and pushed by the environmentalists and the climate hysterics actually end up killing more people than, quote unquote, the climate disaster ever would have.
Well, exactly. I mean, look at where we are with all of these green policies. The technology is just not there yet. As much as you want clean energy, I think that's great. Fine, go for nuclear. I mean, nuclear is great. It's very clean. And as far as energy density is concerned, that's where it's at. Nobody wants that either. You can't please these people. But the route that we're taking right now, especially trying to use wind and solar, watch hydrogen will be next. Watch, it'll be the next big thing that won't work either. It's we're doing that, but we're capping ourselves at the knee on everything else. You can't just turn around and change tomorrow. Right? You can't just say, we're going to go all solar tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. It also isn't feasible because it's intermittent power. But, all of these policies have gotten to us exactly where Europe is, in an energy crisis. Can you imagine, really? I mean, it's 2022 and we're talking, you might not be able to, wash your hair tomorrow. We don't have hot water. I mean, this is silly. These policies have led us to literally rolling blackouts, and we should be really far above that. We're taking a huge step back, and it's only because of the poor energy policy that the West has insisted on moving forward with, that's actually bringing us back.
Yeah, there's almost some sadistic poetic justice coming out of California specifically, where they're actively telling people not to charge their electrical vehicles to spare the grid. It's like, wait a second, this is the solution, and you can't have people using it when the grid is stressed.
You can't have any more ICE vehicles. Are we going to plug them in? I don't know. We don't have any electricity.
So, but focusing in on oil and gas specifically, which is your bread and butter, right, to help the audience understand the opportunity cost that we're involved in right now. Like, what is the potential? Like, what could we do if we didn't have these regulations? What could the world look like if we were able to actually invest in this infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, well, the one good thing about shale is that it's made a lot of advancements, right? And the one of the good things is that you can bring new wells online a lot faster than you can for something like an offshore deep ocean project, right? Because those projects take 7 to 10 years to really bring them from idea to where you're actually pumping. So that's, one of the great innovations about shale, that you can do that, in a year and a half, and cut that time down to, a third. Plus, new technology, new technology is always evolving in that to make things more efficient, better, cleaner. The thing that I fear is that, all these energy policies now that are kind of demonizing the industry is going to cut a lot of technology off, right? Because firms are going to be like, well, nobody's going to be drilling anymore, so why advance new technology for these companies? And so I think that's another one of the bad things. Another bad thing that we're also seeing kind of in the industry is that because of the ESG movement, which we'll get into that in a minute, but we're seeing lack of labor pool, right? Nobody's going to college and wants to get into this industry anymore, right? They want to all go to ESG or whatever. So we're having a real problem finding like the new generation to work in this industry and kind of bring them up in this industry. So that's also a problem. But I mean, but there's so much opportunity there. If we just didn't have these regulations, we could do it, and we could pursue these. I mean, there's so many jobs to be had, right? Because you have to think when this is what people don't think about is all the peripheral jobs you have. So say you you want to build a bunch of wells somewhere out in the middle of, nowhere, right? So what has to come? You need technology there. You need to build restaurants. You need to build places for people to live. You need car dealerships. You need, you can build whole towns around these places, which, is a thriving environment and a ton of jobs.
Yeah, we're beginning to see it already, particularly with drilling teams. It's one of the underlying trends that I've been observing behind the scenes, speaking with a lot of people who are drilling upstream, is they can't actually get a drilling team on site to drill the wells. There's a lot of people who are ready to drill, but there simply isn't enough equipment or talent to bring these wells online.
Well, exactly. So I think, we can pursue that more. But on the ESG factor, the one good thing that we're seeing right now is kind of ESG is kind of falling out of favor in the financial world. Like we're seeing a bunch of funds. I mean, first of all, all those funds charge a premium, and all those managers that manage ESG funds always charge a premium because everybody wants it, right? But they're underperformers, and they're expensive. And they all had baskets of, if you actually look into one of those ETFs, I mean, there's a bunch of oil in there. There's just a bunch of random companies that are not, ESG.
Raytheon is ESG now.
Oh, I think you know what I think. You think that's ridiculous. But the good thing is we're actually seeing ETFs now dropping ESG from their name, right? And because they're being underperformers. So we're kind of starting to see a backlash. And we even had, Jamie Dimon came out just the other day and he's like, we need to be drilling oil and gas, which is kind of a complete turnaround because JPM was one of the banks that was like, we're not going to fund these projects anymore, along with BlackRock and Goldman. So perhaps we are seeing, I'm going to, bring some bright notes into this. So perhaps we are seeing kind of a glimpse of a change. And I think what will really help us, at least in the financial world, is we really start seeing kind of these banks change, right? Because if we want to get these projects up and running, they also need funding. So
yeah, it's hilarious that all these people are turning on a dime right now as things hit a hedge. It's
freeze now. Well, I mean, mostly I would say, we're seeing that in the U.S. EU, I have to say, is still diehard anti-oil and gas. But we are seeing kind of a change here in the States, which is promising to me.
Yeah, no, it is promising to see. And so if you're in oil and gas, like what has been like a contrarian play in the space throughout the last couple of years that you think is going to pay off as this ESG meme begins to die? Because I think it is dying. It's inevitably not profitable and doesn't make any sense from a human flourishing perspective.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, I still think, and I've been pounding on the table on this for years on, U.S. nat gas, because I always said that it's perfect transition fuel because it's clean burning, but, more so than, say, oil, right? It's cheap, it's abundant. It's not so cheap right now, but cheap and abundant, and you can, I think it's a perfect transition fuel for especially like emerging markets, especially in Africa, nations in Africa and such. So, I've been, vested in nat gas companies, especially ones that have access to distribution centers, either via pipeline or that kind of own, produce and own, have their own distribution center. And now that, now that it seems like the EU is, going to cut themselves out at the knee as far as Russia is concerned, because they're going to enact price caps. Really, the market's really tight in Asia right now. And so, the US is really the only place they can go right now. I mean, if you look at Nigeria wants to produce more, but they would, technically speaking, can't. I mean, they have big dreams, but they got a lot of problem with, aging equipment and theft. So I think right now, and if you look at somebody like Algeria, Spain's getting a lot of gas from Algeria, but, Russia has a big hand in Algeria. So I don't know how much more, it'll take a lot of negotiation, I guess, to get them to send more to the EU. But back to the United States is, the United States is really the only place they can go right now. So I expect, the U.S. to pick up. I mean, the U.S. has already picked up a lot of that business that, during that shift away from Russia. But, I think they'll pick up some more. So, I've been definitely, pro U.S. nat gas for quite a few, the last five years or so. And then, I think there's a lot of opportunity in general to starting investment because, over the last probably 7 years or so, we saw a lot of mergers and acquisitions. We saw a lot of bankruptcies, so I think that, kind of the ones that are still standing are pretty solid at this point, just because the rest kind of went away.
Yeah, and the LNG is becoming a huge topic now too, because as the European countries lose access to Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, and they can't get the gas, they're now turning to LNG providers. And so is the infrastructure in Europe ready to actually supercharge an LNG market?
Not yet. I mean, they still need to build out facilities, and they have big goals like they're hoping by 2024, but, I would say that's probably going to take longer than they think to build out those storage facilities because they just don't have them, which means we'll probably see a lot more, you see a lot more spot cargoes and things of that nature, because they just don't have the storage. They want to build out the storage, which is great, but I just think it's going to take a couple more years than they anticipate. But at least they are thinking about it, and they do have that plan. So it's one can expect.
No, but that's another thing with the Biden administration, like the EQTs, or not EQT, Toby Rice's company, the name's escaping me, the largest natural gas provider in the U.S. They want to build more LNG exporting plants, but they're having problems at the government level as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're getting kicked in the teeth constantly with this administration, right? I mean, there was just a lawsuit with LNG Cheniere, right? They just got their permit just got struck down for their turbines at their distribution facility center. So, need to ease up on this permit thing.
Yeah, no, I was correct. It is EQT. I had to double check there. It was, but it's, what else, like in terms of shifting the narrative back towards abundance? I know the first time you were on, we discussed Bitcoin mining in oil and gas fields, and it's been a couple of years, I believe, since you last been on the show. And so, have you been paying attention to that trend? Are you bullish on it?
Well,
what do you think about it?
No, I mean, I think it's, I follow you, so I see what you have to say. But no, I think it's a great trend. And I think that's, I think that it's going to take more creativity, what we can do with those wells and things like that. I mean, aside from just Bitcoin mining too, right? I mean, I think we can get really creative. I think we should, if people follow the Bitcoin mining thing and it's successful, I think people will start thinking of other ideas, right? That we can use kind of those, those wells that are kind of just sitting there that are tapped, right? And so I think, people just need to see like one example of something that works really well, that's really successful, and then we can think, oh yeah, I bet we could invest in this doing, whatever. I don't have an idea yet off the top of my head, but but I'm sure there's a lot, I'm sure there's a lot of ideas out there. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there. There's a lot of smart people out there. And so, I think if we get more interest in using those wells, not just for traditional, say, nat gas or, oil drilling, but, and, I think that'll be a really positive thing.
Yeah. There's a lot of people talking about like gene splice, or like the algorithmic gene splicing data centers, and AWS needs high uptime, so they probably aren't like ideal for off-grid stuff. But I think the simple application of going and finding these abandoned orphan wells and using the gas and then plugging it on the back end is just a win overall. If you really are an environmentalist and want to clean up all the waste throughout the United States, I mean, there's no lower hanging fruit than going and finding all these abandoned wells.
Well, exactly. And so I think there's a lot of ideas out there. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurship, and I think it literally takes a lot of a lot more education and explaining things to people, because everybody's, this last generation or two almost, it's been the last generation, all they heard is, this is horrible, this is horrible, this is horrible, this is horrible. So they don't know anything else, but this is horrible, right? And so, I think it's up to us to kind of spread the knowledge, right?
Yeah, not only spread the knowledge, and I think like Bitcoin mining as a mechanism to leverage all these wasted energy sources is a great application. But then what does Bitcoin mining actually secure? It secures this peer-to-peer digital cash system that cannot be controlled by any one government or coalition of governments, which many could argue that this is why the world finds itself in the place that it does today, with the weaponization of SWIFT and bank reserves against Russia. I think Bitcoin narrative is twofold. Number one, in the energy sector, you have that ability to leverage these wasted resources. But then number two, in terms of international trade of these energy assets, you just create a much more level playing field in terms of the settlement system that you're using to conduct this trade. So you're not really beholden to a petrodollar system or the whims of the West and what they want to do with their monetary system. And so actually, I think Bitcoin is the most peaceful path forward in terms of reducing the amount of friction we see on the international stage when it comes to trading energy assets and then weaponizing monetary systems.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, we're already seeing, a kind of a fracturing away from SWIFT for, other countries like, Russia's starting the mirror system, or has the mirror system. It's just not widely used, which is their version of SWIFT. But, a lot more people are kind of joining that. So we do have this kind of this split. That said, obviously 100% better would be something completely out of state control, right? Completely out of the state's hand, because, look at CBDC, but they're all going to, have central bank digital currencies, and they're going to control your life even more so than they already do, which is completely the most frightening thought ever. So if that doesn't scare you enough to kind of want to turn into your own banker, I don't know. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you just escaped Canada. Canada doesn't even have a CBDC yet, and the amount of control they have over it.
And they're confiscating your bank accounts. I mean, it was nuts. You have no idea. I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah. So what was it? What has your life been like the last few years, and why did you decide to finally get out?
It was crazy there. I was actually not there for the trucker thing. I moved back to this. I finally just found a place to live, but I moved back in February. But I mean, it just was becoming increasingly more government control, right? I mean, they had all these internet laws where they can go after you now if they find out that you posted something that they don't like. They can literally go after you for hate speech or whatever, and go to jail for it. So it's just those it was like those little steps, and then when COVID hit, forget it. It was like all out. And now they have the excuse to, do whatever they wanted to do. Government control. I mean, we were literally locked down for 2 years. I mean, we had a curfew. You couldn't step off your lawn after 8 p.m. or you could get arrested. I mean, it's like, oh, that's what.
Well, like how this is perplexing for me as an American looking north and seeing how obviously Justin Trudeau is like a robot. Like, how do people put up with him? Like, how has he not been? Like, can you impeach a president? Like, are people happy with what he's doing?
I think is how Canada is they really believe that government is for the good of them. Like, we are the government. We're here to take care of you, right? Because they've never really, never had like big rebellion. They've never had, very different from the States in that way. So they actually think, most people, not everybody obviously, but a lot of people there actually think the government's doing this to take care of me, and the government knows better than me, right? I mean, they're already kind of socialist anyway, but socialist healthcare system, things like that. So it's kind of, I think it's just their nature is very different than, say, people from the United States. We're very rebellious kind of people. Just by
I'm waiting
nature.
for. Do you see any future in which Alberta rises up and says, "Hey, we're done with you, Quebec, and we're going to leverage our oil resources. We're going to stick up for our rights."
I think you're already starting to see it, especially like in Alberta. I mean, there is a very big split between the West and the East. The problem is that most people live in either Ontario or in Quebec. And they're very liberal and left leaning. So there goes, they kind of run the country basically. But, I think you're starting to see the West, especially again in Alberta, Saskatchewan, kind of. I think you're seeing a little more of the rebel side. I mean, look at the truckers, right? I mean, that was huge for Canada.
Yeah, that trucker rally got me on Tucker Carlson because they froze all the bank accounts, and they had to turn to Bitcoin to raise money. And I had to go on Tucker and explain why Bitcoin actually works in that situation. So shout out to the truckers for getting me on Tucker.
All right, there you go.
Yeah,
actually, I got really emotional because just not used to it. I really did, even though I wasn't there. I was like, oh, this is so great.
Yeah, well, I think that thank God for the Canadian truckers. I do think they did instill some confidence in other blue collar workers across the world. Obviously, we've seen the farmers rally in Netherlands and in Poland, all across Europe. The common man is actually doing the hard work. Again, that's another reason I've really been trying to meme this concept of the unproductive class, the people who run governments or live in coastal cities and do like Excel pushing jobs that actually don't produce the things that make the economy go around, trying to navel gaze at the people doing the hard work that make our modern reality actually possible. I really
who makes the economy run? The guys drilling oil, the guys driving trucks, the guys out there in boats shipping everything. And that's who runs the economy, right? So you gotta, I think our problem is, one of the big problems is in the U.S. government. Everybody's like a lifetime politician, right? They've all done nothing else except for be a politician, so they're completely out of touch with their constituency.
Yeah, and then you just use the heuristic, like anybody who's actually productive would never want to be a politician. So the politicians are only like psychopathic sociopaths who want to have power over people and not actually produce.
We need term limits, man. And like somebody under 80 would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting ready for another Trump election season here. It's like, this guy's 84.
I know.
Our current president can't even make a sentence.
Let's kick these people out, all of them.
Yeah. Well, again, going back to like the states' rights thing, I don't know if you followed my beating of this drum over the last couple of years, but again, I really am bullish on states turning around to the federal government, giving them the finger and saying, leave us alone. And again, going back to Bitcoin mining, I think we should start Bitcoin mining permanent funds. States like Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Kentucky, with all these rich natural gas resources, should simply like issue muni bonds, raise some cash, buy some miners, partner with a mining company, go to their abandoned wells, tap them open, mine Bitcoin with them, pay back the muni bond holders, and then roll any profits into a permanent fund above that. And then you get to a point where you build that up over the course of many years, and the federal government comes to you and says, hey, if you don't do this, you're not getting this money. You can turn it around and say, hey, I've got this permanent fund. I actually don't need your money, so please fuck off. Leave us alone.
I love it. I think it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
I love it.
We need to meme this into reality, Tracy.
Okay. I'll hit it with you. I'll do it. I'll help you. I like it. I really like the idea. Actually, I think it's brilliant. Because really, I mean, you're always going to be beholden to the government if you're going to ask them for a handout, right? That's kind of what they want, right? I mean, all of these handouts just, that just gives them more and more power over you.
Well, that's like the very interesting situation we find ourselves in now. Like, do you think we could be seeing the beginning of a hyperinflationary crisis in Europe that leads to a credit crisis here in the United States. And like, while we're like, how do we get away from this? How do we get away from this? Like, is the nation state model as it's currently erected, built on a house of cards of debt, is it imploding on itself? Like, do you see a scenario in which these governments actually fail?
Absolutely. I think we're gonna have a huge problem. I would watch FX right now, because I think we're, with the dollar so strong right now, we're starting to see cracks. I mean, look at the yen, right? We're at 144, 145. The dollar is way too strong right now. Emerging markets are going to hit. So I think where the crisis is going to start, I think it's going to be a currency crisis first, is where that's going to start. And that's going to bring down the house, potentially. Hopefully not, but, it's not that far gone to think that it would.
Yeah, I mean, you have the euro trading at parity or below parity with the dollar, which is insane.
Exactly. And I don't think it's near close to done yet. Look at Europe's a disaster. So I think that could easily go lower.
Yeah, and they're all going to be forced to exacerbate the problem, because the only mechanism by which they know how to try to solve these problems is just to print more or give more handouts, which is just going to, you can't, like we said earlier, you can't print money and produce natural gas. It's not how it works. You're simply going to drive more currency units at scarcer and scarcer supply side assets.
Exactly. But that's all they know how to do. It's boom and bust, right? They, print a bunch of money, you have a booming economy, right? Put that in quotes. And now they're going to try to hike us into a recession. And then they'll, as soon as we get into too big of a recession, then they'll have to print again. It's a vicious cycle. We've been doing it for years.
Well, that's another interesting part around like the Orwellian dystopian language around this. Have you noticed the trend of people at the Federal Reserve and at the ECB beginning to try to meme the term growth recession into the minds of people?
You're like that, and soft landing. Growth recession. It's not going to be bad, right?
Yeah, I mean the growth recession line is particularly nefarious, because they're like, hey, we need to cool down the economy so that we can heat it back up, and you have people like Larry Summers and others coming out and calling for anywhere between 5 and 10% unemployment, completely neglecting to address the fact that there would be mass suffering if that happened right now. And especially when you consider the financial straits that many American citizens and European citizens alike find themselves in. Like your average American has no savings.
2 years of lockdowns. I mean, it wasn't as bad in the U.S., but still, how many businesses went out of business? How many small businesses never came back? If you crush the economy again, how many businesses are, not going to come back? I mean, already today in Germany, Schultz was, talking about, yes, a lot of businesses are going to have to shut down this winter, but it's not permanent, right? Once you shut down a business, the chances of it coming back up are, 1% to 2%. So, I mean, it's already happening. That and flatten the curve. I literally had PTSD all morning.
Yeah, well, and then, I mean, it's extremely sad because, especially in the UK, over the last couple of weeks, you've had a lot of small business owners and individuals get their electricity bill, which seemed to be variable from month to month. And a lot of people are waking up like, holy crap, like if this persists for 2 or 3 months, I'm not going to have a business.
Oh, exactly. So, those are all floating around Twitter. They're shocking. I mean, they're even worse than the EU. So, we'll see. I have a glimmer of hope for the UK. A glimmer.
Glimmer. Yeah, we gotta stay out as optimistic as possible.
But we gotta focus on the US so we don't get that bad first. I mean, We're at the point where we could actually save ourselves. We're not, completely down the hole yet. We're at the point we can just stop digging and we'll be okay. Ish.
I mean, I know like the way out of it where we don't keep digging is deregulate and just let people drill and actually invest in this infrastructure and embolden oil and gas industry specifically, like, hey, you guys are doing a good thing. We are very thankful that you're providing us with our modern day lifestyle. That is a solution. How do we get there? Do we need a movement of citizens standing up and demanding, hey, we need to stop shooting ourselves in the foot? Do you think something happens politically? Do you think the failure of ESG leads these people to wake up? Like, how do we actually make this so we don't shoot ourselves in the foot anymore?
I think we need to do it. We, the people, need to stand up and do it, right? And think locally, because by the time people start, revolting, usually it's too late. So we need to start, the grassroots movement, literally, and really start educating people and get out there and, try to change things. Hopefully, if you do it at the local level and then go out, from your individual communities to then your city to then your state, I think that sort of organic growth is a lot easier than trying to tackle the federal government right away. Do you know what I mean? If you're just going straight to the top, I think if you have some more organic growth, I think that movement could be much more peaceful and better, and kind of go from the inside out instead of trying from the top down.
Yeah. And again, Bitcoin can help here. You just go to local counties. So that's like in northern Tennessee, I have a company. We're buying up a bunch of these stranded natural gas wells, and we essentially go to the farmers where a lot of these wells exist, and they've just been sitting there for decades, not doing anything. We say, hey, what if we pay your land lease and we actually come onto your land and use your natural gas, and maybe we'll even give you some of the Bitcoin for letting us use your land. And they love it. They're like, all right, you're taking a cost for getting use out of this. And they go to the county and say, hey, this is actually good. You're reducing methane leak. And then you get a good local reputation there. So that's on the Bitcoin mining side of things. And that's another great thing. I'm not sure if you've caught this trend, but the beef initiative, where there's a grassroots movement on the farming side of things, where there's people really, myself included, encouraging others to go stop buying your beef directly from the grocery store, go meet your farmer, shake his hand, and figure out how you can help him. Because again, another part of this energy crisis is the food crisis that comes after it. And trying to front run that is extremely important.
No, it's really good. And then you cut out those, because a lot of those costs are because there's very few meat processors, right? So they jack up prices, whatever they want. If you can cut that middleman out, it's better for the farmer and it's better for you, right? So,
and the beef tastes better.
I've been talking about that for a while. Actually, so, make friends with your local farmer, butcher, find one. I know somebody in Oklahoma who ships, so that works perfect.
Yeah, go shake your local rancher's hand, freaks, if you haven't already. Tracy, we're getting to the top of the hour here. I want to thank you for coming on. Is there anything on the top of your mind that you think the freaks should be aware of as we wrap up here in the context of energy, credit markets, currency markets, whatever it may be?
Yeah, well, I want to. There's a lot of bad things going on right now, but I kind of want to wrap up by saying I think it's better. Definitely keep your eye on the currency markets, because I really think that's where everything is going to start cracking first, and that's how you're going to know. Is when you start seeing some. You're just seeing like straight up moves in like the yen and the dollar and whatever. But when that starts cracking, you're going to see a ton of volatility, and it's going to get nuts. That's that's going to be, I think, one of your first clues that stuff is going down into, kind of make sure your house is in order, just in case, because it's going to happen. The credit crisis is definitely happening in Europe before it happens in the United States. But I think that'll be your first clue. And then, again, if we all want to get out there, we want to change things for the better. So, get local, and with your neighbors, with your people, and grow your group organically there, because right now voting people in or out of the federal government, it's not really doing it right now.
No, it is not the way. We need to
I would encourage you to vote and vote for every office, but I think really kind of the organic growth of the movement that we're talking about here today, I think really starts on the local level.
Yes. Go shake your neighbor's hand too. I'm here in a small town. This is our noon bell. The kids know it's lunchtime now.
Nice.
But no, I agree. Go shake your neighbor's hand. Go shake your rancher's hand. Think local. And another thing I would encourage you guys: you have power. Speak up if you see this trend that is taking down Europe right now, coming to the United States. You don't want to come here. Speak up. Tell your local county commissioner. Tell your state representative. Write your senator at the federal level. Say, hey, we do not want this to come to the United States. We need to act completely differently.
Everybody thinks somebody else is going to do it, so then nobody ends up doing it. You know what I mean? So, take the initiative and don't think, oh, somebody else can take care of it, right? Take care of it. It takes 2 seconds to write an email to, your local representatives or to your senator.
If not you, then who? If not you, then who? Get off your ass. You don't even have to get off your ass. Probably listening to this on the computer.
Right? You just have to sit at your computer, which you do every day anyway. So there you go.
Hit Command T, open up a new tab, and search for your local representative. Tracy, it's a pleasure. I'm glad to see that you have escaped Canada and you are in safer pastures. Hopefully, now that you're in this, if you're ever in Texas, let me know. Particularly Austin, we can do this in person.
Perfect. Love it.
Awesome. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yep, you too.
All right. Peace and love, freaks. Okay.